All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 75 of the Handsome Hockey Podcast. I am Jake, and across from me is the ever debonair
Evan.
You
can use my name. That's fine. Or I don't know. Cut it. Whatever. I don't care.
I'm not cutting anything. I'm just putting it out there, and we're gonna, warts and all. We are coming to you from lovely, drunk with excitement, Portland, Oregon, because we might get a WNBA team, apparently.
It's fun. I'm excited.
We need a women's team to kind of battle the thorns for women's sports supremacy here in the Rose City. So
yeah, and also pick up that ball that they fumbled like a little bit. But that's a podcast probably for another day.
Yeah, and probably I don't give a shit about basketball. So like, people, did you see the thing that the guy did? No.
Yeah, like I'll probably go to a game.
Oh yeah,
have them. Like it will be cool.
I'll go to sporting events. I'll go to basketball games.
Yeah,
but while I'm there, I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
right. You know what else is cool? Bo Horvat got traded.
Yeah, he got himself off the sinking ship that is the Canucks.
And onto a maybe faster sinking ship.
Yeah, but at least it's in a different ocean.
Yeah.
And like the seafood's arguably better on the East Coast. So you got traded from to the Long Island Islanders but still skated as a Canucks representative in the All-Star game, which was both cute and awkward.
And I feel like appropriate too, honestly.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely appropriate.
He made the All-Star game as a Canuck. So, yeah. The trade was for Anthony Beauvillier, R2 Roddy, and this year's first-round draft pick of the Islanders that is protected, I believe, in the top 12. Mm-hmm. So if it ends up in the top 12 this year, they default it to 2024.
They have a choice technically, but like, why wouldn't you take the better pick? I mean, unless they just like really hate who's ever at 12.
Yeah. So
fuck this guy in particular.
Fuck these six fish in particular.
Yeah. Anthony Beauvillier of looking like a human Bratz doll fame. He's hoping to maybe resurrect a bit of a stalled career in Vancouver. He'll probably take on bigger minutes, hopefully escape the defense first dogma that is the Islander system. So, there's some upside there. R2 Roddy is a good young prospect, probably going to break in relatively soon.
Well, he's been playing for a good chunk of the year in New York, but he's having like a kind of a humdrum rookie season. He's
fine.
Well, at one point he was considered a odds-on number one pick, and his draft year was pretty underwhelming over in Finland, so he slipped into the second round. He had kind of a blistering start to his professional career in the minors, and then like he looks the part of an NHLer. It's just yet to be determined what level of NHLer. Is he a top six, middle six, bottom six? Early analysis says middle six at best.
But he's in the NHL because he's got a blonde girlfriend.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's apparently every single NHLer dates a Swedish supermodel. Like I don't know how that happens, but or that there were that many of them, but kudos. It's like you get drafted and they hand you one. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could go the route of Mike Fisher and like settle for Carrie Underwood.
Yeah, what a bummer.
I know, right? Just how could you do that to yourself?
Yeah, like she's been waiting all day for Monday night, and like he's like, but I play on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Horvat then shortly thereafter signed a deal, 8 years, $8.5 million per. Lou Lamoriello remarked that the deal was too long and too much money,
which is great because it's both him like deadpanning, but also saying what he actually fucking thinks.
Yeah, and as we approach a new CBA coming up here, and bargaining on both sides will be very tough, as it always is between the NHLPA and the NHL. One of the things that I'm pretty sure the ownership will go for is shorter max deals, like 5 years if you sign a player, 6 years if they're already on your team, sort of thing. In the long run, that could actually end up making players more money, but it has less of an appeal from a safety net sort of standpoint.
Mm-hmm. But like, whoever signs an 8-year deal that like works out for both parties, I
think the Stamkos one is looking pretty good right now.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But outside of that, it's only those elite players that sign those deals and it works out. The smartest thing the NHL did, or NHL execs did, was they were like, oh, I can sign these guys for 8 years. Okay, why don't I do that after the expiration of their rookie contract?
Mm-hmm.
Have them through their best years,
right?
And then we'll see where they're at when they're 31. That was like the that wasn't started by Ken Holland because it was intelligent.
Well, and it takes the right player to get 8 years at the end of a rookie contract. Like, those players that get 8 years at the end of a rookie contract today are the Jason Robertsons, the
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar, Moritz Seider kind of guys. Like, oh yeah, they're the kind of players.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with this deal. I mean, in the current cap climate, it seems like a lot, but the cap is expected to go up here pretty soon, so maybe it's not as bad as people think it is. But it feels like a lot of money to give somebody on a very obvious career year. You don't see players often take the leap at 29 or 27. I think he's 20. He's 27. Mm-hmm. So like you don't often see the leap happen that late in your career, but who knows?
What about like 34?
Didn't happen for me.
Asking for a friend.
It didn't happen for me.
Damn it.
So kind of an addition to a story we talked about last week with Ivan Provorov's, homophobia. We'll just say it what it is.
Yep.
I respect everybody's choice, except I clearly don't respect this one.
Well, and that's, you did title the episode last week, homophobia. So yeah, you can probably just call it that.
Snakes and homophobia.
Yeah.
He could be a snake, and maybe I was referring to that. Anyways,
ambiguity, baby.
Yeah. Take your best guess.
Yeah, we don't even need to go to another state for this next story because it's right there in New York.
Well,
unlike the NFL, both the NHL franchises
play in New York. It's the New Jersey Jets versus the New Jersey Giants.
Right, exactly.
So the New York Rangers had a Pride Night, and then they kind of didn't.
Yeah, they kind of got less prideful about it, very quietly stashing their Pride jerseys that were advertised and supposed to be auctioned off.
For charity, for LGBTQ plus charities.
Yeah, they very nonchalantly just didn't wear them as a team for Warmies as they were marketing towards everyone else all year long.
Yeah. Why do we even need a Pride Night? Because it's always your night. Shut the fuck up.
And one wonders, who exactly signed off on this, considering that James Dolan is the owner but the market is New York, but Gary Bettman, in his comments later to reporters, let it slip that it was players. So, the decision was made as a team to shield those players from the kind of heat that Pravravrov was made to feel after his, shameful but at least out in the open decision to boycott the warm up with the Pride jersey on.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that even those players who may be sympathetic or pro LGBTQ plus were like, you know what, my buddy here deserves a break.
Yeah, and I do understand somewhat that you want to be, pro team, pro whatever, but it's a workplace. It's your team chemistry is just kind of a feature of the sport. This is your job. This is your office. If you make decisions like that, you're doing so with the intent to shield certain people from consequences that, other professionals wouldn't or couldn't be shielded in that same way. You or I, if we were doing some sort of pride thing and we decided, hey, we're not going to do it, people would know. People would judge us for that. So yeah, I'm sure there are people in that room that are pissed off about it. I'm sure I'd even be willing to bet that more than half of them think that's BS. I don't know. But as
a silent majority, if you will.
Yeah. At least you want to think that.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep hearing and keep saying hey, if you actually knew what a lot of the players' personal sentiments are, you would be horrified. But this is this is bullshit all around. It's bullshit for Gary to go to bat for them and for them to slink away from their commitment to diversifying the sport just because of a couple players' opinions. I mean, they keep doing it. They did it also with relation to this job fair that they were going to have around the All-Star game. That was going to be for basically everyone but the most... It was going to be a job fair for everyone but the most represented group in hockey, white men. It's basically for women, minorities, whatever. And under pressure from Ron DeSantis and Tucker Carlson and Fox News, Waystar Royko, whatever you have it, that whole machine, they folded. The league needs to have some backbone, stand up to these people instead of just backing off of something that in effect will grow the game.
Yeah. And the thing that corporations and the NHL don't really realize is that the memories of those who are being harmed are much longer than the memories of those who are doing the harming.
No, definitely.
So in 6 months, the GOP war machine will sign some other group up to be lambasted.
It's only a matter of time.
The eye of Sauron, that is the GOP, will eventually move, but the eye of equity remains affixed.
Yeah.
And these people that you will at some point have to court to be fans of your game will remember this. Whereas Ron DeSantis has already forgotten about it. Matt Getz is busy muff diving on a 14-year-old. And so he has already forgotten. And so and I'm keeping that one.
Marjorie Taylor Greene never actually comprehended.
Did you see her Cruella DeVille outfit tonight?
No.
Yeah, she looked like a fucking extra from 101 Dalmatians. I couldn't tell if she was going for Cruella DeVille or a Dalmatian, but looks can be deceiving either way. This is all to say that our next story is about the NHL ratings drop.
Yeah. Fancy that, huh?
Yeah. And the NHL ratings drop has been, it is it has been publicized despite the fact that a lot of the numbers are very deceiving.
Sure.
ESPN and TNT were throwing games up against Sunday Night Football, and nobody beats the NFL, not even the NFL. You can't go up against that NFL juggernaut and hope to win. And so the lower ratings for those games, if you take those games out of the equation, their numbers are actually a little bit higher than last season.
Yeah, on a per presented game basis, sometimes they do pretty well. But on the whole, numbers are down something like 22% year over year from last year. And there's just the drum that cannot be beaten enough about these damn regional blackouts. Like, if we in Portland can't turn on our ESPN Plus subscription and watch fucking Seattle Kraken, what do you want us to do as fans? Like, yeah, maybe we don't want to pay for a cable package. So sue us. We're millennials. That's what we do. Like, market to the fans that want to watch your product, and they will come. If you make it harder for them to watch a game, they'll do what a lot of us do and just go on the, the cracked backwater streams of the internet and wade through 15 pop-up ads and just like tons of poorly photoshopped fake titties to watch hockey. Like, and speaking of that thought from the league, the fucking board ads.
Yeah.
Also awful.
Yeah, it is always great to see somebody get spilled into the boards and then watch the screen crackle in front of you.
Yeah, it looks like shit. It makes the on ice product actively worse, harder to track. Like, it would be one thing if they were just static, but if they're not, screwing with you trying to follow the play, they're distracting you with like a zooming car going the opposite direction of the play or something. And it does make for some kind of funny things when the player looks like he's gotten taken out by the dog that's running up the side of the boards. But get rid of that shit.
Yeah.
The tech is bad. It doesn't look good. Just stop it.
Bring back the Fox tracks and fuck your board ads.
Right. Use that technology to bring more digital advertisement in other areas. Like, some of the on ice ads, I think, are digitally superimposed. And like, we don't mind those as much because they're static. They're not distracting.
People can skate through them and not disappear.
Exactly. And, the other thing that is definitely leading to lower ad revenue and lower numbers is who is bad this year. It's a lot of major markets. Chicago is actively tanking. Montreal is still rebuilding. Toronto's doing Toronto things.
2 of the 3 California teams suck. Florida's not very good this year.
Right. It's not a great year for marquee franchises to be putting up big numbers outside of maybe Boston. Philadelphia, they're in the shitter. All 5 people in Arizona that follow the team aren't watching.
And if they are watching, they're at Mullet Arena having a fucking great time, apparently.
Yeah.
Or fighting with Boston fans and biting off their fingers.
Yeah, but Bally Sports also isn't helping the cause. They're going through a bankruptcy, and also they can't get their fucking white balance right. Like, if you look at any Bally Sports broadcast, it looks like a Christopher Nolan Batman film. It's like cold, completely too blue. Amateurs have fixed it with Adobe Premiere or whatever and made it much, much more watchable. It's actually just embarrassing that a national televised publication can't just make the on-camera product from a camera technology perspective look presentable when some film students can.
Yeah, I think there's a multimedia class at the school I work at that has been working on this probably. Like it's like multimedia 285, how to fix Bally Sports shitty presentation. And it's a bummer because the Red Wings play on Bally Sports almost every game. But at least then I get Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond. So yeah, overall, I think the NHL is doing fine. And now that Sunday Night Football is over, I think we'll see a drastic improvement in those ratings, and they'll probably get up to or close to where they were last year. This is, for me, kind of a nothing burger. The NHL has a 7-year contract with TNT and ESPN, so they have 5 years left to fix whatever it is and kind of work with ESPN and TNT to say, hey, maybe don't put us up against Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, but also from a perspective of they don't do the same things that they haven't been doing for the last 20, 30 years, like competently marketing star players, putting any of their products like out in interesting places where they might not otherwise be. You know, the NHL has definitely taken a back seat, even more so over our watching careers, to the major sports in terms of revenue that like than they had back then. So like year over year, the growth of every other major sport in terms of revenue just smokes the NHL, which has gone up, yes, but compared with the NFL's meteoric rise in that time frame, and like, you know, a decent rise from like baseball. Like the NHL can't even get its act together well enough to compete with baseball on like an exciting sport level. Yeah.
And if you haven't watched a baseball game lately, outside of the playoffs, it's what I call nap time. The NHL has a far superior TV product and still can't get its shit together. And part of that is Gary Bettman's fault. And we've been doing a lot of Gary bashing, and that's because it's well-deserved, because this motherfucker got a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah. Like, I recognize that he has presented some form of leadership through some trials and tribulations for the league. But one has to think that he's maybe a replacement level league face. I don't know.
So Gary's Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, sponsored by Lee Dungarees for his penchant for dad jeans.
Dads everywhere can look up to Gary Bettman as a model to follow, be mediocre for 30 plus years, and still be looked up to for some fucking reason.
That's poetry right there.
You see that guy over there? Yeah, the guy, he's actively on meth. Yeah, that's my dad.
But he's been around for 30 years.
How was he as a father? Oh, we don't talk about it much.
And that's what Brett Hall says.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If we could give the opposite of a Lifetime Achievement Award, that's probably what would go to Bobby Hull, who was, to his credit, good at hockey. But he was a bad person.
He was good at one thing.
Yeah, scoring
Congratulations.
goals. And you know, being an NHL star for his era. But he has strained relationships with his children, beat many wives.
His daughter turned into a lawyer for abused women because of her dad.
Yeah, and you know, Brett Hull has not really talked glowingly about the guy. He once reportedly said some pro-Nazi things in a Russian newspaper. That account was somewhat disputed, but no one said that, like, that's not something that he would have said.
And nobody was like, there's no way Bobby Hull was a Nazi lover. It was like, oh, that was misquoted.
Right. And the accounts of his domestic violence are harrowing. It's insane that someone that was found or accused of doing these things was trotted out the way he has been by the Chicago franchise. But, well, he's been trotted out by the Chicago franchise for better or worse for 20 some odd years now.
I will say this. I think that their response to his passing was a little muted, especially comparing it to like Stan Mikita's passing or Esposito, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They put his number on the ice. They wore game patches and stickers on their helmets and all this. And they're not doing that with Bobby Hull.
No, but they also are only not doing that because of the pushback that they've received for the last 10 years.
Right. But I mean, they may have actually learned something, like at least in this like one small microscopic way. They didn't go as far as they did for other heroes of that era. And maybe that says something about somebody in there. Maybe Rocky Wirtz's kid was like
one of those women that they trotted out at the draft. Maybe,
one of the binders full of women was like, you know what? Maybe we don't go all out for this guy because he was, probably a Nazi and Nazi lover. My bad. No, you don't have to be a Nazi lover to be a Nazi. Look at all those punk bands from the 80s. Either way, this is a key representation of all of those times when people on the right don't allow themselves to take the good with the bad. Like, you can say Bobby Hull was an excellent hockey player. That's okay. But to eschew commenting on the other seems really suspicious and really like it's very calculated. And I think I wrote this on our Twitter. It was like, to say Bobby Hull was an excellent hockey player is fine, but it shows your angle and shows your bias if you don't also talk about the other things, because in this case, the other things are really bad.
Yeah, like, and just horrifyingly bad.
It's not like he threw a cup of water on a lady.
Yeah,
like,
right.
He's beaten several of them in his life.
Threatened with firearms.
Yeah, like stalked around the house with a shotgun while his kids were hiding under a bed. Like, he's a demonstrative, awful person. And
a lot of people had bad in-person meetings with the guy. There's lots of stories of him just being a drunk asshole.
So I feel like it's just a misconception that you can only talk about like, hey, George Washington, best dude ever, first president. He had slaves, right? Fuck you. Look, we're not here to talk about the bad. We need to talk about the bad.
Right.
And that doesn't take away from his on-ice accomplishments. Like, he still has the stats to show that he was an excellent hockey player. Mm-hmm. It does take away from him as a person. And, we need to talk about both of those in order to have an actual healthy mindset and representation of the history that we are following and are creating.
Yeah, and just to bring this back to Gary, this is a good place to point out that the NHL still does not have a defined domestic abuse policy. They've dealt with their domestic abuse scandals kind of as one-offs, whereas it would probably be good to get something specifically on the books, in my opinion, when you have incidents like Slava Voinov or Mike Ribeiro, in the relatively recent rearview mirror.
Austin Watson.
Yeah, exactly. Austin Watson is a prime example because it's like, okay, you need to deal with this more harshly, and they didn't. So, they need a policy. They need to deal with this. You could name it after Bobby Hull. They love to name shit after old players.
Yeah, we've got a Selke Award.
Yeah,
how about
right.
the Bobby Hull domestic abuse policy?
Yeah.
From things that are toxic to things that are poisonous. So Robin Lehner, we got an update about snakes on a plane himself.
But snakes and probably a camper van right now because he's got creditors. So fewer planes.
So he owes $27.3 million to creditors, which is less than what was originally quoted. I think because of his filing, it could be anywhere from like 10 to 50 million. And it turns out it's 27.3.
Sort of like how snakes can expand to eat prey.
We're calling this the anaconda effect. A large portion of this debt is related to his solar company called Solar Code, which super strange for an NHL player to have a solar company. I mean, maybe if that's like a pet project and whatnot, but like,
it's probably just a way to like try and absorb government subsidies. I don't know. Yeah, it maybe does illustrate like an effort on his part to do something interesting and meaningful. I mean, no one will say that Robin Lehner doesn't care. Like,
oh, absolutely.
And so, I don't know. I think this goes in the sort of like positive check mark category.
Yeah. And again, we said this last week or last episode. We're not critiquing Robin Lehner as a person here. He's very clearly an outspoken champion of many things that we find near and dear. This is just really funny.
Well, it also does sort of demonstrate like the other side of mental health. Like,
right.
You gotta think that these decisions were not exactly made of sound mind and body, or at least you want to think that. I mean,
the dude fucking loves reptiles. Like,
sure,
that's apparent, right?
Sure. Like, but how do you sell your wife on a snake farm in Missouri? Like, I want to know what that...
How do you sell a loved one on anything in Missouri?
Yeah, I mean, like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Just like Missouri.
We got an arch. Cool, man. I love that they're proud of the arch, but the arch is like a representation of where people gathered to leave.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
They're like, we're getting the fuck out of here. Let's use this as a staging point. The RL Exotics, which is Robin Lehner's snakes, is the listed value for it in the deposition was unknown. That's a really poorly run company when you don't know the value of it.
Yeah, I think it depends on like what the fighting value of these snakes or something. Or
I don't even think I'd want to watch a snake fight. Like, two boa constrictors just laying in a ring, like doing nothing.
Yeah, that might be fucking days long.
And then like one of them moves, and they're like, ah, and then it just like goes back to sleep, and you're like, somebody get the heat lamps. And then finally, I had good intentions to
buy a snake farm.
No, we talked last week about how we are making sure that neither one of us buys a snake farm.
Okay, I was just checking.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love your proactive friendship. I really appreciate it. No, I had plans to watch part of the All-Star Game festivities, and I didn't. I didn't watch a single fucking moment.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. The jerseys that I thought were gonna look kind of cool looked kind of dumb on the ice. It kind of was hard to tell who was who.
I like the seafoam green ones, I think, were my favorite.
Yeah, as a design, like on paper they looked cool, but like on human beings playing hockey, they looked weird. And I don't know, that's the litmus test for me, I guess. I'm sure there are lots of like jersey beatniks that would disagree with me. Accuracy competition was kind of cool. They like shot side by side in the final, and so that was pretty cool. Like, I don't know, made it into a more of a competition. The dunk tank was fun because dunk tanks are always fun, is what I've learned.
They're never not fun.
Yeah, we did a dunk tank like at my church when I was a kid, and we did a dunk tank at my office recently. All the partners took turns getting dunked by their employees, and it's like, oh, this is like the closest that anyone can get in America to like an equitable workplace. It's like
capitalism.
Yeah, dunk tanks always work. So to see, players getting dunked by their teammates was great. Trevor Zegras and Troy Stecher got into it verbally on the ice and had to be restrained by officials when Trevor Zegras said something that pissed Troy Stecher way the hell off. And Troy Stecher's a typically mild-mannered dude.
And immediately internet sleuths were like, oh, he said something about his dead dad. And it's like, one, his dad died 3 years ago. Like, obviously it still sucks. But I don't think Trevor Zegras is picking up on that as a means of chirping Troy Stetcher.
Yeah, that's like Kobe Bryant levels of like maniacally knowing your opponent. And like Trevor Zegras is fine, but I don't know. I would not expect him to like mine that deep into someone's personal life or even like be cognizant of whether his parents were alive or dead.
Yeah.
Like,
could he learn that on Chell? No, then
Yeah.
he's not going to know it.
And so, yeah, the strange thing about this is that Troy Stetcher, in fact, had to come out and say through the team, but the team said, no, Troy said that wasn't what he said. Okay, we believe you, but also,
what did he say?
Yeah, like, did he, like, was it some all-time own, like,
Probably made fun of his dog.
I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say to me bounces off and sticks to you. Did he say, like, you can put ketchup on a Chicago hot dog?
Why you would ever even eat a Chicago hot dog is beyond me.
Oh, Chicago hot dogs are great.
They're fucking terrible.
I think
I would eat a Costco hot dog over a Chicago hot dog.
I mean, a Costco hot dog you're allowed to put ketchup on.
Yeah, that's why it's better. Round one, fight. Ketchup? Oh, sorry, Chicago. Not only is your pizza overrated, but your hot dogs suck.
Well, nobody eats Chicago deep dish pizza there. Like, did I when I was home? Yes. But that's the only time as like a Chicagoan you would eat deep dish pizza is like when your tourist family members are visiting or like when every once in a while you're like, yeah, I want some gigantic deep pie experience. And because it's not really, pizza is maybe a bit of a misnomer. It is maybe more of like a cheesy meat pie.
See, if they had called it cheesy meat pie, I'm in. Like,
suddenly Jake is in on Chicago.
But if it's pizza, like, and I can't pick it up, go fuck yourself. Also, go fuck yourself. Le Piss Baby Supreme.
For our Canadian listeners, that is Le Piss Baby Supreme with an E in the end.
Yes, Supreme. That sounded Eastern European. Anyways, Jordan Binnington, who is probably the biggest turd in the NHL outside of the homophobic, racist ranks, which, hell, he might be that too. I don't know.
Yeah, but just in terms of like on ice.
Yeah.
Heel antics.
In on ice demeanor, he is the biggest turd of them all. Like, it was against the Avs, and some a ruckus started in the corner, and of course Jordan Binnington felt the need to like get in on it,
right, with his giant marshmallow pads.
And it's fun, like during the highlight, you watch the highlight of it and you watch Georgiev come out of his net and start skating towards center, and the ref turns and goes, no, get the fuck back to your crease.
Which is exactly what they should do.
And he was like, okay. And like turned back around.
Yeah, you can tell Georgiev is like, I don't particularly care about this. But also, he felt like personally offended that Binnington was just acting like a baby.
It was a chance for him to fight Jordan Binnington. Like that's every goalie's dream. It's like Stanley Cup, Vezina, fight Jordan Binnington.
These are your goals, Jake. This isn't every goalie.
I'm not even a goalie.
You're just I think you're projecting a little.
I'm just a boy.
Just a small town boy. Born and raised in South Detroit.
Canada, Ontario. Yeah.
But Georgiev took to giving the press conference, giving him shit for being himself and just kind of throwing a fit and kind of egging Georgiev on like he might fight, but then obviously never coming to fruition because, well, that would probably be like on top of the fucking episode if Jordan Binnington actually fought somebody.
It would have been great if like Chara had gotten a hold of him at one point. Just like, or Dustin Byfuglien.
Yeah, someone that can just like punch through the goalie like padding. Like, just like
breaks his knee by punching his leg protector. And it's like you just watch his knee fold the opposite way.
Right, like the punch equivalent of a fucking anti-tank round.
It's like, speaking about injuries, though, this one sucks. Mallory Suliotis broke her femur.
Yeah, that sucks. That's supposed to be very painful. Is what I've been told.
It's a huge break of the human body. It takes a long time to heal. Obviously, Suliotis is going to be out for the rest of the PHF season. Massive blow for the Whale, who swooped in on her when her contract with Boston expired, and was, counting on her to be a stalwart at the back end and as well as on the power play. This kind of fell through the cracks of the long gap between episode 73 and episode 74. And I saw her tweet about promising, she said she promised her mom that she wouldn't do a lot of couch shopping and that she was failing. And I was like, and I thought like, oh, recovery, couch shopping. Oh, okay.
Do you mean like shopping from the couch or shopping for a new couch?
You know what? TBD.
Gotcha.
But then I went back and I saw it again. I was like, oh shit, she broke her femur. Oh, wow. That's a huge thing to come back from. So not like, oh my God, she'll never play again, but like it's going to take a while.
Yeah. I keep thinking and saying ow to myself. Oh, yeah. Like whenever you say femur, I say ow, femur, ow, femur, ow.
Femur.
Ow. Yeah.
It sounds like a 80s Russian player. We've got Ivan Femurau here.
Now, is that a hockey player or a pharmaceutical?
The Purdue company is proud to present Femurau.
Yeah, right.
It's where instead of giving you a pill that addicts you for the rest of your life, they just come to your house and break your fucking leg.
And then give you the pill that addicts you for the rest of your life. I was thinking Femurau is like Fix-A-Flat for your femur.
What if Purdue had like been going around the country with like hit squads, like breaking people's bones specifically so they had to take painkillers?
Somehow they would get it out of the news cycle magically.
Yeah, and never go to prison for it.
But yeah, Mallory Suliotis probably on a decent amount of painkillers, and the only winner in this situation are her cats.
In good women's hockey news
and good jersey news.
Oh yeah, if you are in the market for a PHF kit, have I got a deal for you?
And also just like, look at this, New York Rangers.
Yeah, it's a fucking rad jersey. It's awesome. The Montreal Force wore Indigenous women's jerseys designed by Indigenous artist Ganadio Jada Hopper. The jerseys were auctioned off in support of Indigenous charities that support Indigenous causes in the Quebec province. Hopper, the artist, says that the jerseys were designed to show support for women in general and the power of women, but the woman figure on the jersey was in red in support of missing and murdered Indigenous women throughout Canada, and was an opportunity for the artist to raise up the voices of those whose voices were stolen.
Yeah, that's a really poignant cause, and I'm glad that this team was able to bring awareness to it. It's something that we can't talk enough about, is this really under the radar but crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada, between residential schools and reservation systems and whatnot. Indigenous people have faced cultural genocide, and this is only one aspect of it, but finding and finding out the stories of people that have been frankly disappeared by a system that doesn't value their lives enough. It's an important cause for hockey to step forward and talk about because of its, immediate proximity to hockey. I mean, we have hockey Hall of Famers that were part of Indigenous schools. So this is an important topic, and I'm glad that the Montreal Force were able to address it in such a meaningful and awesome looking way.
In year one.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing says raise awareness for a cause more so than creating an awesome fucking jersey for it.
Yeah. And you really put the conversation into a different place when you bring attention to it through a piece of artwork that looks amazing. It's not a press release. It's not a badly misguided town hall appearance. It's a piece of artwork that stands alone, and it's also giving business directly to that community. So yeah, kudos to them.
Also, staying in Canada, Rick Westhead released an article. I'm going to say wrote an article. Yeah, that seems a lot. It's released a new LP, The Sounds of Science. No,
new Rick Westhead mixtape dropped. It's a banger.
Unfortunately, the Greater Toronto Hockey League has confirmed that its officials contacted York Regional Police and Hockey Canada's third-party investigators after learning in October that several U18 Toronto Titans players had allegedly posted dozens of homophobic slurs and death threats on a team group chat.
I am sometimes glad that our generation did not have group chats for sports teams growing up. 'Cause hey, maybe we would have seen some of this type of shit too. But it does also just speak to the inherent flashpoint that is hockey culture and that is sports culture for these types of bigotry. And the more that we can do to recognize that it's systemic and that we need to kind of deal with it straight on and find strategies to deal with it, the better off we'll be and the less of it we'll have to boil to the surface. That the police thought to get involved with this is probably good. That we're talking about it now is good, but that it exists and that, the proverbial muckraker of the NHL, Rick Westhead, had to get involved and write about it. It shows just how not far below the surface this type of thing is.
Yeah, how just because it has to go a little bit underground doesn't mean it's that far away. We just watched Ivan Provorov refuse to wear a jersey because it had a rainbow on it.
I need to make a stand to show that certain people need to be marginalized instead of celebrated. You are kind of with progress or you're against it. That's just kind of how it works.
And history has shown that being against progress doesn't age well.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sure we're going to hear more about this in the coming days and weeks. Details are a little kind of dicey at this point. Not dicey, but kind of just still starting to form.
Right. And what is exactly the crime that's committed here other than probably threats? Who knows?
Obviously, somebody on this team has been pretty maligned, and we'll comment further on this as more details arise. But just stop it.
Yeah,
it's okay to not hate people. You don't have to have enemies because they're mostly created in your own mind. We create enemies so we have something to rally around, but stop it. It's so much easier to not be a hateful twat. Like it's so much easier to just like either A, not have an opinion, or B, accept. Like then you don't have to walk around being like, oh God, ugh. Did you just see the drag queens were out and about again?
There's an agenda. They're taking our germs.
Yeah, or you could just be like, oh, a drag queen, and go about the rest of your day.
Yeah, right.
It's really fucking easy, it turns out.
Like you can't. That is a valid thought. Like, oh, that drag queen looks all crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
okay.
You've observed accurately. That's the point.
Yeah. Congrats. Their makeup is just decadent. Okay. Yeah. Congrats. Yeah. You're right, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Speaking of players that are loosely associated with homophobic slurs, part of the Kyle Beach scandal.
As well as other incidents, Mr. Kane.
Yeah, and players that haven't also particularly aged well. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, reportedly on the trade block for, the last 2 years, have been reportedly tendered with a shopping list of locations that they could be dealt to, sort of like they're being sold timeshares. I imagine they like suckered them into a room with like a ruse. Oh yeah, we got a special interview for you up here, Johnny. Come on in. And it's like, all right, we could send you to sunny Florida. We could send you to not sunny Winnipeg.
The quote about Josh Morrissey, they asked him what his beach attire was, and he goes, well, I play in Winnipeg, and there's not really beach days there. I was reading an article the other day about how Patrick Kane, or it was a snippet in an article I was reading about the trade deadline, and Patrick Kane and his agent were talking, and they're like, yeah, we'll maybe say something about this, like, right as the deadline approaches. Like, I have a feeling that Kane and Toews are going to just walk down their contracts.
Yeah, I think the only way that they're sold on someplace is if this other place is willing to tender them a new deal, and if it is truly someplace where they like want to go and retire.
And it's also Chicago.
Yeah, and it's a cup contender, maybe. Like, I don't see Toews having a whole ton of value for a whole lot of franchises at this point, unless you're like Colorado and you just need some guy that can win faceoffs, because, well, the dude can still win faceoffs.
He's had a solid year, like,
sure.
For him. He's definitely not the player he once was, but
no,
he's had a bit of a renaissance this year.
Yeah, and he is truly like a 5-tool type player. Kane, on the other hand,
he's got a great arm from the outfield.
Yeah, he can field. Kane, on the other hand, probably has more service life in him as a scorer. Seems like he's had a down year, and could be valuable on a 3-year deal or something like that. I mean, he's probably looking for 5. I don't know. I don't know what these guys are going to command, because at least to me, they seem like kind of washed up, diminishing returns kind of players. So I'm interested to see if they decide to choose. Also, this is the anniversary of my unfandom of the Chicago hockey team, thanks to Mr. Wirtz's surprise tirade in the wake of the Kyle Beach scandal, showing that they ain't learned shit. And yeah, the Kraken are better.
Yeah, way better. And I feel like there's no fucking way Gary Bettman lets Chicago have Connor Bedard.
Yeah, if Spittin' Chicklets is to be believed, the tank is in to not bring Connor to the Blackhawks because Gary's angry.
I think he's going to Anaheim or Arizona.
Well, I mean, that's also have the best outright chances to win the pick at this point. But,
I think Columbus does.
Oh, yeah. Dark Horse.
Yeah, Dark Horse. God, I hope he doesn't go to Columbus.
This has been your Tankathon update.
Yeah, well, we said we weren't going to talk about it.
Sponsored by the A1 Abrams, heading to Ukraine right now.
Sponsored by Dylan Strome, who has re-signed with the Caps. He's getting a 5-year, $5 million per deal.
Speaking of castaway Blackhawks.
Yeah, of which many of the NHL are.
Yeah, these days. When you had a fire sale, yes.
Who's Kirby Dach? I don't know. Where is he? We don't know.
Actually doing really well in Montreal this year, like looking like a core piece of their future rebuild.
So yeah, Dylan Strome has impressed the Caps brass enough to where they were like, actually, you're the youngest player on our team. So yeah, you're re-signed.
Yeah. They think he's a rookie.
Yeah.
Dylan, get the coffee.
How many grandkids do you have? None? What? Sign on the dotted line.
Dylan's like, guys, I'm 30.
He's got himself some stability out there in the nation's capital. 5x5 is no joke. Like that's a healthy contract, and good for him for finding a landing spot after everything went away in Chicago.
Yeah, and Washington as like kind of a sneaky buyer here. He's got some good years left to him, and then they also tendered Sonny Milano a real NHL deal. So kudos to the Capitals for kind of like finding some proverbial gems in the haystack.
Some people get run out of town, and some people get put into a health ward for
put into the ground.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of notables have year-ending injuries, joining the likes of Zach Werenski. Ilya Mikheyev shut it down for the year and was really open about it.
Yeah, he tore his ACL, or like had a partial tear of his ACL, and was playing through it. And there had been some stories coming out of the Vancouver media, because of course they have nothing but good things to write about, that like they were mishandling his injury situation because they mishandled some other players' injury situations. And he came out and said like, no, actually they did a good job here. I knew what I was doing, was playing through this injury that he knew he needed to get surgery on, but wasn't going to really get any worse, he didn't think. And so he decided that it was time to shut down to be ready for training camp next year so he could get the surgery and be done. But yeah, the amount of wounded seems to be piling up here. Poor Gus Nyquist out for the year, as is Cole Caulfield, unfortunately, for enjoyers of goals and fantasy points. That's a major blow for a Montreal team that, frankly, knows what they have in him at this point. Like,
yeah, now that they have a coach who knows what the hell to do with him.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be one of the star players in that team for the foreseeable future. So why not just let the rest of your farm team run rampant and get guys experience and like try again next year?
Trying this year, we're talking about a bunch of players who are done for the year. The Bruins, on the other hand, had a bunch of guys who were going to be missed for the first half of the year. And people were like, oh, is this the year the Bruins take a step back? Like, how are they going to survive without Brad Marchand? How are they going to survive without Charlie McAvoy? They're really good.
Yeah, they turned out just fine.
Yeah, it took them until just before the All-Star game to lose 2 games in a row. That's how good they are.
Crazy.
That's a stupidly good season already. I don't think they've locked in a playoff spot just yet, but I think they're like very close to have locking in a place.
Money Puck has them at 100%.
Right. Like, that's not surprising, but I mean, like, mathematically absolutely guaranteed a playoff spot. Yeah, they're not officially a lock as of yet.
But
they're very, very close. So good for them. I'm excited to see how this plays out, because like, I'm not a Boston sports guy. I'm not an anti-Boston sports guy, but this is a really good story with like the possible last hurrah of this extremely talented and dedicated group in Boston.
Yeah. And Netflix finally has a subject for Last Dance 2.
Right. Yeah. And it's like just Brad Marchand licking people. Brad Marchand licked me and I took it personally. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, we've got a long way to go, but I think there is a lot of intrigue, and I think there's just like good vibes around Boston this year.
Well, I mean, if you talk to Boston fans, they are absolutely pumped, but also they're like, okay, wait, really? How good are we? And no, this can't possibly last. But they're like the other two emotions that follow, like, yeah, this fucking rocks.
Yeah, that happens to me like every time our roller team wins a game. I'm like, oh man, how good are we? And then the next week we beat 11-2, and I'm like, oh, this couldn't last.
I mean, I do that every time we like score a goal or get a lead. So someone that's been scoring a lot of goals, especially this year, Rasmus Dahlin, he is also pumped. He penned a open letter to Buffalo saying that him and the rest of the Sabres are starting to feel it. They feel Buffalo's excitement. They're getting excited. Quote unquote, we believe in what we have here, and there is nowhere else we would rather be. End quote. Is that a shot at a certain somebody, you think?
His first name is Jack, and his last name rhymes with Eichel.
Jack Smichael?
Yes.
Jack,
I think it's absolutely a shot over like a shot at Jack Eichel. And honestly, I hope they keep that sort of like hatred going.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it fuels them.
And like Jack Eichel knows that when he opened up his big mouth, he opened himself up to this type of thing coming back, and he can take it like an adult. It also featured just this great rap of like hockey nicknames typed out, which was like kind of funny. It sort of reminded me of Matt Damon like riffing off all of his fake siblings in Good Will Hunting. But so like you can only say this in like the Letterkenny voice. Like, oh, you're a fucking beauty. Oh, you got Tomer and Mitzi and Cuzzy and Jokey and Sammy and Bryce and Aspie and Vic, Kevin, and then he's talking about the front office. You got Kevin and Donnie and Okie. Like, if I talked about my bosses like that, even in Portland, Oregon, they'd probably be like, yeah, fuck you, go away. But
Okie, he's a good guy. Oh, he's a great guy.
yeah, Okie over there. So I don't know, just like to have a mental image of like Rasmus Dahlin, who I'm sure did not actually like type the keys. I don't know. I do not believe that.
No, he's young enough to be
like,
computer savvy and able to type without even thinking about it.
Sure, but I don't know. I always imagine that all of these like Players Tribune stories are like not ghostwritten but dictated, and so I just like the mental image of Rasmus Dahlin like dictating these teammate
Tomer,
nicknames.
yeah, that's with two M's.
Yeah, not Tommen, the king from Game of Thrones that killed himself. No, Tomer.
The guy spells it wrong. He's like, "Oh, you are spare parts, aren't you, bud?"
Yeah. Speaking of spare parts, this one got picked up by the Oilers. They had an emergency backup goalie situation. He wasn't technically an emergency backup goalie, but he was signed for one game due to illness. The Oilers, due to Stuart Skinner's illness, signed University of Alberta goaltender Matt Berlin to back up for one of their games.
Would you say it was like an airlift?
There may have been a plane involved. It's pretty likely. It was probably a pretty small plane, so perhaps not on the same scale. But yeah, a one-man Berlin airlift was a possibility. But he actually got into the game thanks to, apparently, if you listen to reports, Connor McDavid's lobbying for him being put in the game, which is like, it's already a great story anytime an e-bug or goalie of this sort gets into a game. And that Jay Woodcroft was able to give Connor McDavid credit for it is like kind of dope in my eyes.
Connor McDavid's got to be closing in kind of on like the LeBron James sort of is actually the coach level.
Yeah, right.
Right.
He's not officially the player coach, but he's pulling the strings.
Yeah, he's not quite Paul Newman from Slapshot.
But he's close there. Yeah, it's...
with Paul Newman with less foil.
Yeah, I would absolutely believe that. He seems like such a class act, and to do something cool like this for some guy that is with your team for a day. You know, like he probably gave him like a fucking penny tour of the arena, like while he was there.
He took him on a tour and then was like, so that'll be $5. I've got to pay to get my house redecorated after I broke up with my girlfriend, who was a shitty interior decorator. Oh, all right.
I got one more thing.
Oh boy.
It's a surprise, but it's to take us out. We're going to ghost you like the Vermilion County Bobcats. Reportedly, the Quad City Storm Pro Hockey Club of the SPHL, they showed up to a game and their opponent didn't. And they waited for 2 minutes, took a penalty. They took a 2-minute penalty, waited 5 more minutes, and then they called the game. Apparently, this Vermilion County Bobcats, their alienation starts at the top, and their owner is allegedly not paying the players on time. And so the players didn't show up for the game, and Quad City Storm won and forfeit.
You say ghosting, so like Patrick Swayze showed up and was like helping them make clay pots.
He actually gave the face-off for the game that never happened.
Demi Moore was like awkwardly aroused by a phantasm.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of awkward, to add awkwardness to this, it was supposed to be a 2-game homestand for the maybe not long existing Vermilion County Bobcats. Not only that, they had a skate with the team event following the game that the Quad City Storm did instead. They instead, took their fans out for a skate after their team just didn't show up.
The only thing more awkward than that is the usual way in which I go about closing out episodes. This has been yet another episode of the Handsome Hockey Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Look at us recording in like almost back-to-back weeks. Like,
yeah, look at us go.
Who
would have thought?
We're fucking gems.
Mm-hmm. You're a beauty.
Yeah, you're a fucking the heavens are fucking beauties.
I treat you so good.
How about we go out for dim sum? Just you and me.
Fuck you, Shorzy.
You're right there. You wake up. That's me right there being good to you.
I mean, he really isn't selling himself with that line, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's cute. Anyways, we are all over the internets, whether you want us there or not. Probably not. You can check out our webpage, handsomehockey.com. Follow us on Instagram, Handsome Hockey Podcast, or follow us on Twitters at Handsome Hockey. You know, you can email us like a doofus, handsomehockeypod@gmail.com. I haven't checked our email in probably like 2 months because I had to block it because of all the spam we were getting. So if you have emailed us and we haven't responded, blame the spam. You can also check out our Handsome Hockey Facebook page. Well, this is awkward too. This dead silence where we're supposed to close out the show, but we just kind of sit here.
You're still here?
Oh,
you're supposed to leave.
We are at your house. Yeah, I can leave. Yeah. I was delaying the end of this podcast so that my wife got more time away from me.
Less time out the stank.
I'm a lot. If you can't tell by listening to this podcast, I can be a lot. Be friends with me.
Please.
And with that, thanks everyone for listening. Take care of yourselves and stay handsome, everybody.
Restez beau, tout le monde.